Welcome to Brampton Focus. Well, they could be called the Three Amigos, Caledon, Brampton, and Mississauga. They represent almost 1.2 million Ontarians in the region of Peel, and some would say the engine of Ontario. But there is a movement afoot for almost 20 years that says that the region of Peel has not received their fair share of funding from both federal or provincial governments. My name is Elaine Charbon. Next, we meet Regional Councillor Elaine Moore from Wards 1 and 5 in Brampton, and we're going to discuss fair share for Peel right here on Brampton Focus. Welcome to Brampton Focus. It's been 25 years that my next guest has been involved in politics. Peel Regional School Board for 11 years, councillor for Ward 1 for 1 year, and then from 2003 to 2017, the regional councillor for Ward 1 and 5. My guest is Elaine Moore from the city of Brampton. Welcome, councillor. Thank you for joining us at Brampton Focus.
It's a pleasure to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you. One of the things, we'll get right to the matter at fact, one of the things that has been distressing some folks in Brampton is our representation in the region of Peel. If you look at the population that Brampton has compared to the population of Mississauga and Caledon, there is a deficit in our representation. Some people have said that we need to have more of a vibrant voice from Brampton's perspective at this organization. What is your take on that, and how do you think Brampton is represented in the region of Peel?
Well, I think Justice Adams got it right when he made recommendation to position Brampton for the future and bring all 10 of our councillors to the region and have a single-tier representation, much like Mississauga. And I think that the current census numbers have proven that Justice Adams was right in terms of the amount of growth that would take place in our city. During the time of Justice Adams, Brampton City Council downsized their numbers from 17 to 10 in order to position ourselves for representation of all of us sitting around the table. So I think in terms of continuity, we currently just have 4 who stay back at Brampton. But there are a lot of issues. It's with it being Brampton's turn for a lot of regional investment.
Brampton's turn, that's a key phrase, and I appreciate you bringing that up. One would say that initially when we were talking in the region of Peel, it was Mississauga who was driving the boat, and we were basically a passenger on the bus as far as Brampton was concerned. They had the push. Now, though, if we look at what's happening in 2017, Mississauga to a certain extent has maxed out their land. Brampton still has a lot more of growth to take place, and if you look at the chart there, Brampton has 7 seats. Mississauga has 12. Our population in Brampton is almost 600,000. I mean, we're looking in the next 10 or so years at 700,000. There is a deficit there. Mississauga still holds so much of the power. Is there any plan to change that? Is there any way to modify that? Because I think that's where the question comes in, where, again, it's almost like working with a majority government. Brampton has no power, let us say, to move, right?
Well, I think that the province has the power to move Brampton forward on this issue. They created the Region of Peel Act back in 2004, which essentially separates Peel out from other municipalities. It does allow them to deal with us separately, much like the City of Toronto Act. Brampton's population by 2031 is going to be 919,000 people. We are going to be larger than Mississauga.
Yes.
And so it is reasonable that we have representation at the table during the time of that growth. And the province must recognize that as well. With the triple majority rule, and what that means is that the municipality with the largest population essentially can veto power over any decision that's made at the region of Peel. I think that needs to be addressed, particularly when you look at our population numbers closing in on each other, and Brampton clearly going to surpass Mississauga.
So let's take that step then. Let's talk about 2013 or 2020 with the population. Some have said that Brampton's need to be directly associated with Mississauga and the region of Peel has surpassed its use. Brampton could be autonomous unto itself. There are some who would talk about a super city, either the amalgamation of Brampton and Mississauga together, or separating the two. We share police, we share fire, we share ambulance.
We don't share fire.
Sorry, police and ambulance. Correct. I stand corrected to all the firemen in Brampton.
First time this year you've been wrong on something. I'm sure.
That's very kind of you. Thank you. I dare say you're probably not correct on that. I've made many mistakes. But just to come back to the point, some would say Brampton first. We live in the time of Trump where it's America's first. What is your perspective? I mean, you're a diehard Brampton supporter. You're all about people. You're all about being fiscally responsible. When we look at what's coming down the road, is there a place for Brampton to say maybe it's time for Brampton to be autonomous?
I think that it's worth a conversation at the table. Brampton has invested in Mississauga's infrastructure since 1974 when the region was created.
And Mississauga would also say that they've invested in Brampton's.
They could argue that.
But we have to.
They've paid their share, of course, but
yes.
we've paid.
Well, they did the heavy lifting first because Brampton was. Would you not? I guess you wouldn't agree then that at the outset, Brampton was more of a rural, one would say, farming community, whereas Mississauga was burgeoning. It was because we were able to work with Mississauga that they helped us, and now we've grown up, we've matured.
And they need to invest in our infrastructure,
Yes,
much like we have in theirs.
Right.
And I think that, like any couple, in this case, there's 3 municipalities, who decide to go separate ways. Mm-hmm. It requires a responsible adult conversation at the table to talk about how are we going to divide our assets.
Yes.
It's
a divorce for all intents and purposes.
It is a divorce. It's a divorce where the party, the collective party, has a lot of money sitting in the reserves. Mm-hmm. And there's going to be, I recall having a conversation with Hazel many years ago, and I said, Hazel, happy to get a divorce, but understand you're going to have to sign over all the money that's in the reserve funds, and you'll probably have to write some alimony checks. That is the adult conversation.
And you've been happily married for 43 years. I just want to point that out.
I have been. I'd say happily.
Oh,
he would too. No, it's been great.
43. Was I right on that?
You're right.
There
You have to be a special person to be married to a politician. But we do have, and I don't mean this disrespectfully to Caledon, but we do have a child in the relationship. Yes. And what happens to Caledon? And, I think that this has been a partnership between the 3 municipalities that has worked well. If it's time for it to not work well, let's just sit down and decide how it goes.
With about a minute left, it's not necessarily saying not working well. Is it time that we've grown up? I don't think Mississauga needs Brampton. I think Mississauga needs Brampton for the connectivity, mm-hmm. for the jobs and the exchange. I get that. I think Brampton needs Mississauga, the connectivity and the support. But with 1 minute left, I mean, this has been a discussion that's been going on for some 20 years as far as Brampton being Brampton on its own. Do you think you will see that in the next term? Or that discussion coming to a head?
I think there may be some serious conversations in the next term. I don't think it's going to come to an end. I think that much like it took us, from 1974 to now to get to where we are, yes. I think the conversation to dissolve will take more than 1 term of office.
As we continue our discussion, we're going to talk about fair share Peel. When you talk about someone who is at the front of the parade, talking about Brampton getting its fair share, it's my guest, Elaine Moore, Regional Council for Ward 1 and 5. You're watching Brampton Focus. We'll be back with more right after this. Welcome back to Brampton Focus, second segment here. When you talk about politicians saying who they are, what they want to do, and what they want to get accomplished, I'll read you a quote here. It says, "I have been steadfast and consistent in my belief that taxpayers have the right to understand how their elected officials are spending and investing their hard-earned dollars." That's an excellent statement and something that we all want a politician to do. My next guest, or my continued guest in segment number 2, was the first councillor on Brampton Council to put her expenses online to show the people that elected her where she is spending her money. Elaine Moore, who is the councillor for Wards 1 and 5. That's a great statement. That's quite something to live by, because when people see the high price of electricity, when they see their taxes, when they see their services, they all want to say, "I'm paying your wage, what are you doing?" Have you had many challenges on that, posting your expenses?
Actually, no. Some people may disagree. And, I think that what's important for me is starting the dialogue.
Right.
And when I say people have a right to understand,
Yes.
We can disagree at the end of the day. But what we can't disagree on is that I was withholding information from you. So to me, it's about the conversation with our residents. I always say every day should have a teachable moment. And for everybody who reaches out to my office or sends me an email inquiring about something or criticizing or unhappy about something, it is an opportunity to have a conversation.
I think one of the platforms that Linda Jeffrey ran on was about transparency, about bringing Brampton back and showing the people what's going on. And that's that statement that you made is emblematic of what I think more people are expecting from their politicians, and they're not shy to tell you, I'm going to see what you're spending your money on. No, we've entered a new day.
You don't get into politics expecting that people are going to like everything that you do.
Well, if they did,
a lot of tough decisions.
Yeah, that would be utopia, and
Yeah.
I think that that TV program was done in the '70s as a Stepford Wives, probably. So I don't think that
I don't think
that
I
exists.
could be accused of being one of those. But
No, I'm not. No, I'm not at all. That was the utopia, right? So
yeah, of course.
Now, when you talk about, again, Brampton Focus is our focus. When you talk about Brampton getting its fair share, that is an actual organization that consists of 67 groups who are saying that there is a feeling that Brampton is not getting its fair share, and that we need to be able to get our fair share, and that the Region of Peel needs to be able to get its fair share from funding from the federal government, from the provincial government. Everybody's downloading. It's all the responsibility of the municipalities. How are we doing in achieving that? How successful are we seeing fair share appeal to the province and the federal government to give the Region of Peel our fair share?
Well, I think that the Fair Share for Peel organized over 20 years ago. In response, it's interesting, mostly the school board funding, but then there were other agencies in the community that, as the school board started making a lot of noise about not having enough funding and their fair share of funding, other agencies got involved and a consortium was formed. And I think they've done everything right, in the sense that we expect them to come to the table with an adult conversation. They cranked out numbers, they put statistics together, they showed how other municipalities, other school boards, other agencies were receiving a different level of funding, and they presented it to the government of the day. And we've gone through every iteration of government. We've gone through this.
Isn't that the truth?
This started under the Liberals, there was the NDP, the Conservative, we're back to the Liberals. They've done everything right, particularly locally, and I want to really sort of put a shout out for our non-government organizations, our not-for-profit agencies who have done everything right to maximize the dollars that they do get. We see organizations or facilities, locations like Community Door, where agencies are co-locating in one location so that they can share boardrooms, they can share resources. Not sure you see that in other municipalities, but out of need to stretch the dollars farther and farther in the Region of Peel, that's what our agencies have done. Whether it's the Community Door, whether it's the Catholic Family Services, the William Grenville location that's on West Drive.
Is there something that stands out from Fair Share Peel as an achievement that you could touch on? Is there one thing that comes to mind?
Well, I think that they're known. And they continue, they're exceptional at putting together the statistics for meeting with MPPs and MVP candidates who want to represent us, and really being politically active. Where they haven't been, and they have had some measure of success on an organization by organization basis. But we have a long way to go. We have a funding gap in the Region of Peel compared to other municipalities of $366 million. 10 years ago at the Region of Peel, we had a $500,000 community grant fund. Today, that fund, 10 years later, is $6.5 million.
So we can measure success. That we can measure success.
No, but what my point in that is that the Region of Peel is picking up the slack because provincial and federal funding isn't coming. So the local level of government, the local taxpayer, and of the $6.5 million that the region hands out.
So has Fair Share Peel made a difference?
I think the Fair Share for Peel need to take a different approach. And that is going to be the focus of the forum that we have.
Right, Mississauga's holding a forum. It's here in the Region of Peel. Mississauga's hosting it, and it's a forum to have everybody come in and contribute their ideas and talk. It's for what's the duration of it?
We're probably going to host it over a couple of days.
Yeah.
Mississauga is going to hold it at the Living Arts Centre.
Right.
The Region of Peel, Caledon, and Brampton are all participating in this because we're in it together.
I hear voices on the other side of the camera.
Okay.
What are we going to get at the result? I'm your taxpayer. We're all talking about facts and figures. Is there a tangible objective?
The tangible objective is to put a call to action out to our residents in the Region of Peel and say, to the province, collectively, why are we not getting our fair share? Mm-hmm. We've given them the data, we've given them the statistics. They all acknowledge that the funding levels in Peel are not where they should be. And even when they do make a commitment, for example, with Peel Children's Aid,
yes.
Recognize that they are the lowest funded Children's Aid Society in the province, with growing in a municipality that's growing in leaps and bounds. Well, but they cap the increase at 2% per year.
So if we were to look at, with about a minute left in this segment, we look at healthcare, we look at education, we look at English as a second language. All those three combined have huge implications for the city of Brampton, huge, and for Mississauga, Peel in general. Is there one thing that we can target that we hope we're going to get a result from either the provincial or federal government?
Oh, clear. I think they're different. I think for the provincial government, coming to the table for things like mental health, our fair share for healthcare funding, for provincially or federally rather, I would say that they have a huge role to play in settlement services.
Well, I just interviewed Navdeep Bains, and he's talking about $1.9 million in infrastructure and talking about a huge amount of money that's going to be coming to the city of Brampton. And one of the unfortunate circumstances, there isn't a lot of shovel-ready elements to push ahead. So in one sense, the one hand is saying to the other hand, well, I've got cash, I don't know where to spend it. And the other hand is saying, we need more. Maybe we need to direct them more.
There's two different funding streams. One, of course, is for hard infrastructure. Mm-hmm. The other is human services.
Yes.
And when we talk about fair share for Peel, we're talking about the human services, things that governments have a hard trouble selling at election time, because how do you measure when you're investing in children's mental health issues?
Yes.
How do you measure when you're, investing in housing programs versus
it's hard
bricks
to see
and mortar houses?
Yep.
If they build a multi-residential building for affordable housing, that's a visible representation of an achievement. But when you take 1,000 people off the waiting list through a rent subsidy so that they're renting in various and assorted places across the city, that's invisible to most people.
Yeah.
Governments we know want to hang their hat on something that they
That's actually a good point. It's services and things that you don't see. We're speaking to Councillor Elaine Moore. We're going to have our final segment. We're going to put a bow on Fair Share Peel, and let's look forward. There's a university coming to Brampton. There's all kinds of things that are going to be going on in this city, which makes it interesting to be a politician and being someone who's always been a supporter of the city of Brampton. My name is Michael A. Charbon. You're watching Brampton Focus with Elaine Moore. Back with more right after this. Back to Brampton Focus, our final segment with Councillor Elaine Moore. When you talk about someone who's been in council and has had an effect on the positive movement forward of the city of Brampton, what better than someone who's been sitting in council for 14 years, through the Fennell era and through now the Jeffrey era. Have you ever thought about running for mayor? Is on the list? I'm throwing you a curveball here.
I'm happy in a supportive role.
You're happy in the supportive role. Very politically correct answer. So last segment we were talking about fair share for Peel. When you look at the taxpayer base funding that's available, there's a pool of money. It's about $6.5 million. That's available for people to apply for the things that they need and the things that they want. As we said, there's almost 67 groups that are part of Fair Share for Peel. When you have that bucket, let us say, of $6.5 million, how effective is that money to be able to address the requests that you're getting from the people who need the help within the region.
Right. Well, the $6.5 million that has been set aside out of taxpayer funded at the Region Appeal is a symptom of the fact that our agencies are not being properly funded from the province and the feds where they should be funded from.
That fund, Mississauga pays into it, Brampton. Now, in the same representation as our seats at the Region Appeal, does that apply to the amount of funding into that? Does Mississauga put more money in than Brampton?
No. In fact, staff are very careful to make sure that there is proper investment of that fund right across the region. But even though we set aside $6.5 million of taxpayer funding, the actual ask for funds from the region this year through one of the three funding streams alone was $21 million. That shows the deficit that's in the community with our nonprofit organizations.
Where would you get that other money from? That's almost like $14 million that's needed to...
Absolutely. It shouldn't be funded. It shouldn't be on your local tax bill.
Right.
And so we need that's another reason why we need fair share for Peel to actually to achieve greater success so that the ask from the municipal taxpayer is not as great. And that's just at the region. At the city, we set aside almost $1 million to fund organizations
we're talking voluntary, we're talking all these services that people take for granted.
But the ask, the value of the ask at the city of Brampton was $8 million for $1 million. So we have a huge demand in our community. There should be funding sources that are more relevant and more appropriate for them. But we are the level of government where people look in the whites of our eyes every week.
Are you hopeful? Are you hopeful?
I am hopeful.
Is there a light at the end of the tunnel, as they would say, with this?
I am hopeful. I am realistic, and I understand that, there's only so much money to go around.
Right.
There are huge needs and demands, and I think that that's why we need to make sure that the criteria for funding, whether it's provincially or locally, or even federally, there needs to be a huge level of accountability, and people need to measure the outcome. There needs to be measurable success.
All right, let's look forward now. Brampton has been blessed with a Blue Ribbon Committee. We've identified that there is going to be a university coming to Brampton. Still waiting to hear where it's going to be located and who the university is, but we know it's happening. Also, we have a new health facility that's here in Brampton. There's a bunch of things that are coming up. Wildwood Kingdom is Wet and Wild has come back. I mean, so many positive things. What do you see as being something that people can grasp onto and say that Brampton is growing and Brampton is positive?
I think Brampton is growing. Well, we know it's growing.
Yeah.
You just need to look at driving from one end of the city to the other side over the course of a week or a month, and you see the actual person growth in our community. But there's been tremendous economic growth. I think there's this new council has a lot of energy. We have spirited debate, to use the words of one of my councillors, one of my colleagues.
There's been some conflict, if I can cut to the chase. But I mean, in politics, particularly in municipal politics, there has to be that, right?
I think it's healthy, to be honest. I would like to see the debate more focused on the issues and not personality, but perhaps that's part of our growth. With 7 new members of council out of 12, I think the natural...
We've had the opportunity to interview many of the rookies, as one would call them. They're not rookies anymore, but it always stands the test of time when someone has been on council for 14 years. You know what's gone on. As they would say, you know where some things have gone wrong and some things have gone right. And sometimes when you inject someone new into the mix, they don't necessarily have appreciation for what's past. Is that fair?
I think it might be a fair comment. What's interesting is, and I think as returning councillors, we have a responsibility to be patient.
Right.
And I think we have a responsibility to mentor as well. Some are more receptive to that than others, but...
steady hand was one of the comments that I remember during the elections, Councillor Moore. And how would you say to govern with a steady hand? With just about a minute left, I want to give you an opportunity to talk to the folks in your ward and to the folks in Brampton and give them the Elaine Moore Ward 1 and 5 quick update.
Well, I just want to say that I've lived in Brampton since 1964. My 2 children were born here. My grandchildren were born here. If there's an opportunity for Brampton to run through my DNA, I'd say it's in my DNA. Yeah. I think this is an amazing city with amazing opportunity. And I think that some of the struggles and some of the challenges that we've had are a reflection of a growing community. We've changed demographically. We've changed in population. we've changed, even the median age of our community has changed. It's gone lower.
Yes.
We're one of the youngest communities in Canada. And I think that presents challenges. I think that as elected officials, one of our biggest challenges is managing expectations. And, you know, everybody, when you're growing in 3 of the 4 corners of your city, there's always a challenge for who gets the rec center, who gets the fire station,
right.
who gets the library. And I think that balancing those needs across the community is
It's always the juggling act.
It's the juggling act, and I'm not sure that residents appreciate
well,
the heavy
I think
lifting
many do. I would like to say thank you to Elaine Moore, Regional Councillor for Wards 1 and 5. My name is Michael A. Charbon. Thanks for watching Brampton Focus, and we'll talk to you again very soon.